Would you believe me if I told you that in a matter of seconds, a peaceful afternoon turned into a nightmare, and that the only thing standing between danger and a child was a four-legged hero? How can a dog face wolves for a child? That question captivates anyone, and that's exactly why you need to hear it through to the end. Picture the scene, the close-up on her little face, her wide eyes, her shallow breath. Then a sudden cut to shadows moving among the trees, a rustling that turns into an alert, and barks that grow like drumbeats. The sound becomes muffled, your heart races, and in that second when the world seems to slow down, a dog makes a decision that defies its instinct for self-preservation. Have you ever been there? Stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover now may surprise you and perhaps change the way you view dog loyalty forever. I won't reveal everything now, but I want you to feel the tension. We're talking about real courage, about a dog who placed himself between predators and his little owner, an act that many would call improbable and others impossible. In telling this story, we'll talk about protective instinct, about the deep bond between human and animal, about how life-saving dogs act in a split second when all seems lost. I'll take you inside the scene, the barks piercing the air, the dust kicking up, the dog's body rising like a shield, the reaction of the girl who silently trusts the friend who never abandoned her. And more. We'll understand why, in critical situations, some dogs choose risk over flight. What drives this instinct? How training, temperament, and a history of coexistence can transform an ordinary animal into a true hero. As you imagine this sequence, think about your own relationship with animals. Have you ever witnessed a protective gesture from a dog that touched you? Tell me in the comments below. I want to read it. Stories of hero dogs circulate around the world, living proof that strong bonds can generate extraordinary acts. In this introduction, I want you to feel the film in your head. The music swells, time slows at the moment of confrontation, and then a piercing silence that prepares for relief, or the outcome we're yet to reveal. The intention is simple: to capture your attention with emotion, provide human and animal context, and prepare you for the climax that follows. Throughout the video, we'll provide anecdotes, short testimonies from those who were there, and technical explanations from experts, so you understand not only what happened, but why it happened. This isn't just isolated heroism. It's a window into the instinctive nature of dogs, into the love some carry so intensely that they're willing to risk their own lives. If you enjoy moving animal stories, and especially stories about dogs saving lives, stay with me. I promise to convey every detail with respect and truth. We'll show you images that touch, sounds that tighten your chest, and words that explain. And when I say that this pivotal moment changed that family's life forever, I'm not exaggerating. The gratitude, the scars, the veterinary care, and the community's recognition gave birth to something greater than the story itself. Now take a deep breath, because we're reaching the point where danger and courage collide, and that's precisely where the story takes a turn few imagine. While the scene still lingers in your mind, I have a sincere request. If this story touches you in any way, leave a comment below to share what moved you most, or if you've ever witnessed a similar gesture from an animal. Sharing your experience helps others connect, creates a chain of support, and ensures more stories of life-saving dogs reach those who need to hear them. And believe me, your voice matters a lot in this. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below to share what touched you most. I want to read each story and bring these voices to future videos. And if you're enjoying this type of content, give it a like to show you appreciate these true stories of animal heroism. A like is a simple but powerful signal that we should keep telling stories like this. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future stories of courage and loyalty. Your subscription is what keeps this project alive and gives us the strength to reach more people, help more animals, and promote understanding about behavior and protection. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content, transforming isolated stories into a community that learns and shares emotions together. Now back to the scene. Take a deep breath, because in the following images, you'll see exactly how that critical moment unfolded, step by step, second by second, from the beginning when I asked, "How can a dog face wolves for a child?" The idea I want you to grasp is simple. We're dealing with something beyond isolated instinct. It's a combination of history, bond, and decisions that accumulate to produce a life-changing act of courage. The family involved is one that lives near the woods, where trails are part of their routine, and dusk always brings the scent of wet earth and burning wood. The girl is 6 years old, small, curious, with a sketchbook always at hand, and a natural trust in the dog that has grown up alongside her since she was just a few months old. The dog, named Toro, came from the neighboring farm, a medium-sized animal with a thick coat accustomed to the barking of foxes and the sound of the wind in the branches. From day one, it was clear that this wasn't just a guard dog. This was a companion who slept on the doorstep and chased butterflies to see the girl laugh. This coexistence creates something that, at first glance, seems like simple affection, but which is, in fact, the basis of a transformation, the bond between human and animal that, over time and care, shapes the dog's protective mentality. Imagine the mornings there, the girl running among the cassava plants, Toro walking alongside as if guarding a secret, the neighbors waving from afar. It was a community that knew each other by name and history. Everyone knew when the girl went to the stream, when she went to play in the pasture, and who accompanied her. So when the wolves arrived that afternoon, a rare but possible appearance in areas of transition between pasture and forest, the surprise was collective. Witnesses described the moment in simple, direct words. "It felt like a movie," said the grocery store owner. "It all happened so fast," said the mother, her voice still trembling. There was a note in the local newspaper the next day, a discreet headline that didn't do justice to the emotional impact the family and the community felt afterward. These fragments of evidence and authority, testimonies, a newspaper article, the serious look of the neighbor who helped ward off the predators later, help lend credibility to the story. But they are no substitute for what you see in the eyes of those who were there. Shock, relief, and a gratitude that transforms routines. The little things in that daily life tell a lot about why Toro reacted the way he did. Simple training sessions, daily walks, the habit of responding to a command, but above all, a history of care. The girl who offered a piece of bread, the mother who cleaned the dog's paws, the father who always said Toro was one of the house. This builds behavior that, in critical moments, translates into action. There's a hidden truth in this kind of relationship. It's not always a matter of training versus instinct. Often, the two intertwine. The dog's temperament, the formation of his character through daily interactions, and the decisions the family made in introducing him into the girl's life make up a journey that goes far beyond the incident itself. And the impact of that decision, the puppy's choice to stay, to protect, to place himself between danger and the child, reverberates for months, for years. It changes the way the family views safety, nature, and the very role of animals in our lives. Talking to those who were there, it's clear that the decisive moment was a sum of seconds and intentions, a rustling that caught attention, the girl who tripped, the dog that didn't hesitate. Witnesses recall details so vivid they seem like behind-the-scenes footage from a movie. The dog's stance as it rose between the child and the shadows, a short growl that sounded like a warning, and then the tense confrontation that lasted exactly the length of a deep breath. Then came the rush for help, the rush to the vet, the hands that trembled as they checked for scratches and bites, and the collective feeling that something had been saved that day, not just a life, but the trust of a community that saw, in that moment, something greater than risk, a gesture that reveals how love and responsibility translate into concrete actions. That family underwent a transformation. The mindset shifted around caring for the child and the environment, and practical decisions were made: adjusted fences, revised walking routes, extra vigilance at dusk. All of this is part of the immediate impact and legacy that the story left. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic and understand how invisible factors, such as the silent routine of affection, the small everyday choices, and the stories we build as a community, converge to produce an extraordinary act. Let's look closely at the dog's history, the signals he gave when alert, the way the girl called to him, details that in retrospect reveal themselves as clues to what was to come. There are practical lessons here: how to recognize traits of protective behavior, how to prepare children and animals to coexist in areas where wildlife may appear, and how understanding animal behavior can help us make safer and more humane decisions. But there's also a more intimate and revealing layer: what this episode says about our own journey of empathy, about the way we choose to depend on other beings, and how these dependencies teach us to better care for one another. It's at this intersection of science, emotion, and human experience that the revelations that transform a narrative into a learning experience emerge. As you absorb these images and feelings, consider the role that small acts of care play in forming a powerful bond. Maintaining a routine, being constantly present during playtime and rest, paying attention to the animal's reactions, all of this creates a backdrop from which acts of courage can emerge. As we investigate this case, we will also open a conversation about collective responsibility, how neighbors react, how local institutions can support families in at-risk areas, and how local media, even if timid, can amplify stories that deserve to be heard in depth. Stories like this aren't just meant to move. They're meant to teach, to provoke reflection on decisions we make without realizing it, and on the lasting impact these decisions have on the lives of children, animals, and entire communities. Comment: "This resonates with me." The sound was the first thing to change. It wasn't just an isolated bark, but a sequence of dry cracks, twigs snapping, a rapid rustling that sent goosebumps through the skin of those nearby. The girl stopped, her eyes widening, and in that instant time seemed to stretch. The afternoon scent mingled damp earth with a faint metallic odor wafting from the undergrowth, as if the forest itself had held its breath. That's when Toro lunged forward. He didn't hesitate, didn't look back. His paws stomped hard, kicking up tiny dust particles that hung suspended in the air as if the world had slowed to a crawl. The first howl came soon after, a low sound that echoed through the trees, and the tension became almost palpable. Those who witnessed it say it was as if the scene had taken on darker colors, elongated shadows, rustling leaves, his heart beating in his chest like a drum. The girl screamed, a short sound, almost a sob, but soon fell silent. Toro placed himself between her and the forest. His body arched, the hairs on his back standing on end. A low growl that seemed to say, "You're not going any further." Then the silhouettes appeared, 2 wolves. Then a third, advancing with measured steps, their ears lowered, their eyes fixed. The tension was so intense that every breath seemed too loud. A neighbor who came running later recounted, "He came between us and the wolves, looking bigger than he actually was." It was impressive. The scene seemed rehearsed for a movie, but it was real, raw, with every sound and movement happening before human eyes that could barely believe it. The first advance happened quickly. One of the wolves leaped sideways to test its territory, and Toro responded instantly, lunging forward with a bark that cut through the air. The impact was sharp, paws slamming into paws, teeth meeting for a split second. The girl fell back, scraping her knee, and lay still. Her heart beat so fast, it seemed to echo in the silence between the sounds of fighting. The second wolf tried to flank, and Toro spun, blocking its path with his own body, even with a visible wound on his front paw. It was like watching a survival routine, every movement charged with intention, every sound measured, the snap of twigs, the deep growl, the rustle of tall grass. The music, if there had been any, would have risen to a dramatic crescendo until it burst into an abrupt silence. Those farther away heard the barking and ran, and each witness's mental camera recorded different details. One woman said she'll never forget the sound of teeth clashing. Another neighbor described the scene as a duel of pure courage. And what's striking is that Toro never backed down. He was pushed back twice, bitten and bitten, but always returned to his position between the girl and the wolves. There was a real risk of death. Every wrong move could have cost him dearly. But somehow he held his ground, maintained his focus. When the neighbors finally arrived with pieces of wood and loud cries, the wolves slowly retreated, looking back one last time before disappearing into the woods. It was only at that moment that the silence truly fell, heavy, filled with rapid breathing and trembling hands. The girl was embraced by her mother seconds later, still unable to believe it was over. Toro, panting, lay on the ground, his tongue hanging out, and only then were the cuts noticed, the blood mixed with the dust. He was a wounded hero, but his eyes were still alert, as if making sure the danger had passed. The impact of that moment was so strong that even those not present felt the reverberation in the community. It was a kind of collective revelation, the hidden truth that in times of crisis, courage can come from where you least expect it. And it wasn't just about a dog protecting his owner. It was about an instinctive decision to face something bigger, about mindset, about the ability to transform fear into action. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because that moment of confrontation wasn't just an isolated reaction, but the result of a journey that began much earlier in the small daily interactions, in the trust built between that child and that dog. I want to show you what really happens in an animal's brain when it decides to fight instead of flee, what those seconds reveal about the bond between humans and dogs, and how understanding this can change the way we raise, educate, and care for our own four-legged companions. There are behind-the-scenes details to this story that few people know, details that go beyond the surface and that explain why Toro became the girl's living shield. These details are crucial to understanding the true impact of this episode, not just for that family, but for all of us who, in some way, seek security, loyalty, and meaning in our relationships with our animals. Write it down. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, and begin with what came immediately after that seemingly endless confrontation, the care, the repairs, and the slow reconstruction of what had been shaken. The girl, still trembling, was taken home wrapped in a blanket, her eyes filled with questions, not always born of fear, but of the bewilderment of someone who had seen the world change in a few moments. Her father, with trembling hands, cleaned the small cuts, while her mother did what she could to calm her daughter's rapid breathing. The car that took Toro to the vet seemed too small for the urgency of the moment. There was blood on her fur, scratches, and a deeper wound on a front paw. In the office, the white lights and the smell of disinfectant brought the technical reality to light. Stitches, medication, simple tests to ensure nothing more serious was hidden beneath the dust and adrenaline. The healing was physical, but it was also emotional for the family, for Toro, and for the entire neighborhood that gathered around with the look of someone who had witnessed a transformation. The community's impact was almost immediate. Mentions in local groups, messages of support, the grocery store owner bringing some food as a symbolic gesture, small signs that, combined, amounted to a silent acknowledgement. For many, Toro was no longer just the house dog and became a symbol of courage that had regained its place in the people's lives. Some commented in a surprised tone that the story should have been told more calmly, behind the scenes, so that all the decisions that led to that outcome could be understood. The local press published a discreet report, short interviews with the family and testimonies from neighbors, no media hype, but enough for the story's impact to spread and spark reflections on coexistence, safety, and responsibility in areas where wildlife and humans collide. This is where explanations come in that help us understand the hidden truth behind a seemingly instinctive act. According to Dr. Fulano, a veterinarian and animal behavior researcher, it's common for dogs to take on a protective role when the emotional bond is very strong. He explains that the combination of bonding, early socialization, and individual temperament creates a propensity for active protection. In simple terms, when an animal grows up alongside a child, with constant exchanges of care and trust, a kind of practical empathy occurs. The dog begins to interpret subtle signals, anticipate risks, and, in some cases, prioritize the integrity of the little human over its own safety. It's not magic. It's biology. It's learning. It's daily decisions, those you don't even notice but which form the basis of a behavioral journey. Beyond the bond, practical factors influence Toro's decision. The routine of coexistence, the presence of human figures that reinforced a protective role, and even environmental elements that made confrontation more likely. The way the family walked, the times the girl explored the trail, and the lack of safety measures along that stretch, all of this forms a scenario that, in retrospect, explains the reason for that encounter with the wolves. The transformation in the family's mindset was immediate. Decisions like reinforcing fences, reviewing walking routes, and discussing prevention with neighbors began to take the place of doubts. The impact was not only physical but ethical, a rethinking of how we care for ourselves, how we assume collective responsibility, how we protect what is fragile. There's also a technical layer that deserves attention. Animal behavior in risky situations involves nervous system responses that manifest as a mix of adrenaline, focus, and a kind of choice field between fleeing, hiding, or confronting. In Toro's case, everything indicates that his history of coexistence has shifted him toward active defense. This doesn't mean every dog will do the same. Temperament, breed, previous experiences, and even health all play a role. And that's why experts recommend concrete practices, proper socialization, obedience training that reinforces control in critical moments, and special attention to coexistence with children, understanding cues, respecting boundaries, and teaching children how to react in dangerous situations. The emotional consequences are also profound. The girl experienced a shock that, over time, may give way to gratitude and an even more trusting relationship with Toro. For the family, the experience provokes reflection on previous decisions and encourages a learning process, how to educate the child to deal with animals and the environment, how to strengthen safety, and how to transform the trauma into a starting point for concrete actions. The community, in turn, felt the collective impact. Neighbors talked about responsible ownership, the importance of paying attention to the environment, and the creation of mutual support points in high-risk areas. And there's an effect that sometimes goes unnoticed, but is powerful. Storytelling becomes a tool for transformation. When stories like this circulate responsibly, they generate changes in mindset, small movements that, combined, alter decisions, local policies, and even the way we treat animals. Revelations that come from behind the scenes, conversations with the vet, reports from neighbors, adjustments made to routines, serve as a practical manual for other families experiencing similar situations. The impact, therefore, is both micro and macro. It touches the hearts of those who watch and offers concrete clues to those who need to take action. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring the practical lessons that emerge from Toro's experience and understanding what real measures can reduce risks without taking away the freedom and joy of children and animals. We'll examine warning signs, socialization techniques that actually work, and simple decisions that can prevent dangerous encounters. These revelations don't erase the scare, but they transform it into actionable knowledge. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic. and begin with what this story teaches us when we shift our focus away from the tense moment and look at the transformation that followed. It's not just about an isolated act of courage. It's a journey involving daily decisions, small routines, and choices that, when accumulated, generate an impact capable of transforming the very narrative of the family and community. When the girl returned home and Toro received veterinary care, the story didn't end there. A process of healing, of reconfiguring the mindset about safety, and of practical learning began to unfold. The hidden truth behind the climax is that heroic behaviors rarely arise out of thin air. They are the result of an environment, of emotional training, of a coexistence that teaches the animal to recognize and prioritize that human bond. And this is a key point for anyone who lives with children and animals in areas where wildlife may appear. Prevention is a proactive decision, not a reaction. The impact was felt in layers. Physically, Toro required stitches, bandages, and rest. Emotionally, the family and neighborhood experienced a profound upheaval, a review of priorities, an adjustment of routines. Practical decisions were made, fences were reinforced, walk schedules were re-evaluated, play routes were altered. But more than barriers, there was a shift in mindset. Care became seen as a shared responsibility, not just an individual one. Neighbors began to talk more openly about warning signs. The local school discussed safety practices for children, and the small-town newspaper featured interviews that helped spread the revelations behind the scenes of the incident. This shows that a moving story can generate concrete effects when transformed into collective learning, and it is precisely this transformation that deserves attention. When we think about prevention and coexistence, moving into the technical realm, experts tell us that protective behavior is rooted in biological and social factors. The affectionate bond between child and dog creates a sensitivity that enables the animal to interpret microsignals, a different tone of voice, a sudden stop, a look of fear, even before the human consciously formulates the danger. This isn't romanticizing. It's the result of coexistence and a journey of socialization. However, we must be clear, not every dog will react the same way. Temperament, breed, past experiences, and health influence the decision between fleeing, hiding, or confronting. Therefore, sensible decisions include obedience training, controlled exposure to varied stimuli from an early age, and professional guidance when signs of anxiety or aggression emerge. It's not just about training heroic behavior, but about preparing an animal so that, if necessary, it can act more safely and, simultaneously, teaching children to respect animal boundaries and react appropriately when faced with risk. There's also an ethical weight to this story, transforming the scare into an opportunity for education and local policy. When the community comes together to discuss simple measures, trail lighting, warning signs, safe walking times, they're adopting a preventative approach that reduces the chances of further incidents without hindering the freedom and joy of children and animals. The revelations that emerged after the conflict served as a practical guide for other families, adjusting routes, reinforcing vulnerable areas of the house, maintaining frequent contact with neighbors who can spot signs of wildlife, and establishing a basic protocol in case of emergency. What seemed like just an emotional story took on social impact as the family's decisions began to influence collective attitudes. It's proof that personal narratives can generate concrete change when the community assumes shared responsibility. Emotionally, the effect is profound and lasting. The girl who was rescued will likely have a relationship with Toro marked by gratitude and an intense sense of mutual protection. The family will experience a mix of relief and constant vigilance, a new sensitivity that is part of the healing process. For neighbors, the story serves as a reminder that courage can manifest in unexpected ways and that empathy and collective care are powerful tools for prevention. These lessons act as a catalyst. They spark conversations about responsible stewardship, the role of local institutions, and the importance of listening to experts when it comes to safety in areas where humans interact with wildlife. It's a transformation that involves heart and reason, feelings that move, and information that guides decisions. It's also worth highlighting the behind-the-scenes aspects of this story, the small actions that, at first glance, seem insignificant, but which form the backdrop of heroism. Offered food, playtime routines, nights when the family listened for suspicious noises, all of this shaped Toro's character and created a behavioral history that, at the critical moment, outweighed fear. The revelations behind these scenes help dispel myths and build a more useful narrative. It's not about waiting for a hero, but about creating conditions that ensure safe coexistence and allow animals to act less riskily if necessary. The prevention journey is made up of continuous decisions, attention to the environment, and an ethical commitment to protecting the most vulnerable. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic. Explore with you practical measures, signs we can observe in animal behavior, and real-life examples of how small changes in routine can reduce risks without taking away the lightness of childhood. We'll understand which measures work in everyday life, which training programs are most recommended by professionals, and how the community can organize to transform a traumatic episode into an educational process. These revelations and lessons don't erase the scare, but they translate it into actionable knowledge. And that's where the true value of the story emerges. Because emotion without learning loses some of its transformative power. Comment: that makes sense to me. If you've stuck with me this far, thank you for following this story with such dedication. It makes all the difference. If this narrative touched you in any way, leave a like. It's a simple gesture that shows that stories about courage and care truly matter. And if you made it to the end, write in the comments, "I'm with you until the end." I love seeing those who travel with me on these journeys, and I'll read each message carefully. If you want to continue along these lines, there's a video here that complements this topic. Click and stay with me there. I promise the sequel will bring more behind-the-scenes details and practical lessons that resonate with those who live close to nature and love animals. Thank you for being here. Your presence is part of what transforms these stories into something bigger.